Our main character, a famous gym trainer, faced financial struggles due to COVID-19. To adapt, he turned to online streaming. But one fateful day, after a streaming session, he found himself transported to the mysterious world of Murim. Follow his journey as he uses modern training techniques to become the greatest martial artist in this new world. Our tale unfolds in a big fitness center in Gangnam, Seoul, where there's a small office for staff. Here, our main character, Choi Kang-hyuk, greets everyone tuning into his channel, RecapThe. He points the camera at his meal and announces that, thanks to viewer requests, he's doing a mukbang with the popular honey chicken and beer combo. He dives into the food, putting on a show of enjoying every bite for his audience. Choi Kang-hyuk wasn't always a fitness enthusiast, though. It was a serious injury that changed him. He got hurt badly during a special forces mission, and if he hadn't worked hard to strengthen his muscles, he might have had trouble walking. Kang-hyuk went through tough physical therapy and chiropractic sessions to get better. Once he recovered, he got into different workouts like yoga and Pilates and learned a lot about eating right. He ended up becoming the country's top fitness trainer, so it's surprising to see him streaming a mukbang. Well, the pandemic shook things up. To keep his gyms running, Kang-hyuk had to try streaming. But the money wasn't enough to cover the costs of 5 gyms. After getting emotional about his financial struggles, he said goodbye to his viewers, asking them to subscribe and hit the notification bell. After he made sure the camera was off, his face changed, showing worry about what's to come. He realized he'd had a lot of fried chicken and beer, loads of calories, and knew it would be hard to exercise right away because of the alcohol. Then he remembered what the doctor said about his hair falling out from stress, which shocked him. The doctor explained that even though Kang-hyuk looked healthy, his body was almost breaking down from too much stress. He warned that Kang-hyuk needed to ease up on work or he might go bald. Kang-hyuk couldn't believe it, afraid that being bald would mean he'd be alone. The doctor gave him some medicine and stressed the importance of reducing stress and resting. Kang-hyuk agreed, though reluctantly. Now, lying on the floor, he felt lost and overwhelmed. Work and exercise had always been everything to him, and now he didn't know what to do without them. Then he remembered something and grabbed his phone. As he scrolled through it, he found what he was searching for. In the middle of his busy life, he had forgotten how much he loved reading martial arts novels as a kid. Growing up poor with his grandparents, borrowing these novels from the local bookstore was a cherished memory. He remembered his grandpa scolding him for spending too much time at the bookstore. Finding out that an author named Gadong had written the books he loved as a kid, Absolute Demon's Return and Unorthodox Factions Tyranny, made him smile. Then he saw a new series called Shaolin and Monk Chronicles by someone named Murim Gadong and clicked on it out of curiosity. The story introduced Mu Jin, who goes to the Shaolin Temple to become a martial artist. Interested, Kang-ho scrolled through the chapters, thinking about whether to read it. He started reading and found the novel really captivating, which helped him relax, a feeling he hadn't had since he was a child. As he reminisced, sleepiness washed over him, and he fell to the ground, his phone beside him. Suddenly, his phone lit up, and he heard someone calling him Mu Jin, telling him to hurry to morning exercise. Surprised, he got up, thinking about the morning workout, only to find a bald man shouting that they were going to be late and get yelled at. He called the bald man Kid and wondered how he got into his house and why he had shaved his head like that. The kid replied, asking why he was being called Kid when he was older and bigger. Kang-hyuk, confused, stood up and argued, saying he was 180 centimeters tall, with 8 to 10% body fat, weighing 90 kilograms, and able to lift 650 kilograms per rep. He asked the child if he was seeing things correctly and glanced around, confused about how the child had gotten into his house. When he looked around the room, his confusion grew. He touched his head and realized he was bald too, which made him scream in horror and surprise. He demanded to know what was wrong with his hair and where he was, criticizing the rundown condition of the house. Then it hit him that the child had called him Mu Jin, the name of the main character from the novel he had just read. He stared at his hands in disbelief, wondering why he was Mu Jin and where he was. What troubled him most was that his muscles seemed to have vanished. Since he had just fallen asleep after reading, He convinced himself it was all a dream, as he often had vivid dreams influenced by the books he read. However, the child insisted they were running late and urged him to hurry, which Kang Hyuk reluctantly agreed to, still finding the child oddly charming. As they left the room and hurried along, Kang Hyuk decided that since it was just a dream, he might as well enjoy the experience. When they arrived, their teacher demanded to know why they were late for the first part of the day and announced that they needed a lesson. The teacher then instructed them to take their positions for training. The child next to him apologized, but Kang Hyuk just stared at their teacher, amazed at how real the dream felt. The teacher said they'd start with horse stances, which confused Kang Hyuk. He thought they meant squatting. Hearing others in pain, he looked around and saw them struggling with the stance, trying their best even though it was clearly painful. Kang Hyuk wondered what they were doing and knew they'd hurt their knees if they kept it up. As Kang Hyuk did rehab training, he realized how important lower body and core exercises were. Some trainers only focused on upper body workouts, missing the point of a balanced routine. Seeing other students' stances were too wide and hurting their posture, Kang Hyuk knew this wasn't right for real gym fans. The teacher stressed a strong lower body for martial arts, which puzzled Kang Hyuk. Why encourage stances that might harm them? The teacher said without a strong lower body, they couldn't balance well for punches or staff techniques. Kang Hyuk questioned what the teacher was teaching these students with bad form. Kang Hyuk couldn't stay quiet any longer. He yelled at the instructors, saying they didn't know anything about proper exercise, shocking everyone into silence and getting stares of disbelief. His friend quietly asked what was going on, while the teacher, clearly angry, demanded to know how he dared to disrupt the training like that. The other adults accused him of just making excuses because he found the training tough, wondering if this was how a Shaolin student should behave. One man firmly told him to get into the right position immediately. Even though he felt a lot of energy from their yelling, Kang Hyuk wondered if he felt that way because he thought he was in a martial arts story. But he decided to stand his ground, saying he was just pointing out a mistake. Remembering his time dealing with difficult gym members, he assured himself he wouldn't be intimidated, as this was way easier in comparison. One of the men, clearly annoyed, reminded him that he was a Shaolin student and asked if he was saying Shaolin training was flawed. Caught off guard by the lifelike quality of his dream, Kang Hyuk decided to go along with it, mimicking the way martial artists talk. He said that sticking with their current training approach might cause knee injuries and long-term pain, but the guy brushed it off, saying it sounded like an excuse from someone weak. This left Kang Hyuk puzzled. He asked the guy if martial arts weren't supposed to make both body and mind stronger, pointing out that saying it's not for the weak doesn't make sense. The guy struggled to reply, but someone else jumped in, saying that Shaolin's training was special because it focused on self-improvement and reaching enlightenment. Kang Hyuk agreed, then asked if that meant only strong people could reach enlightenment at Shaolin. The guy stumbled over his words, saying that wasn't what he meant. He got louder, saying their tough physical training was meant to toughen their minds because they naturally crave comfort and can have bad thoughts when times get tough. He said that their training was meant to toughen their minds ahead of tough times. Kang Hyuk disagreed, saying such mental prep was only for young folks, which puzzled everyone. He pushed further, asking if they thought it was okay to mess up their bodies when young, as long as it made their minds strong, suggesting that it was fine to suffer physically in old age for mental strength gained in youth. Then he questioned whether enduring hardship in youth guaranteed wisdom later on. This got the students whispering and the adults panicking. Kang Hyuk boldly pointed at an older monk and asked how much suffering he had gone through, yet still struggled with reaching enlightenment. This bold statement surprised everyone, and one guy thought Kang Hyuk was a daring young fellow for challenging Hye Young, a well-respected top student. Hye Young took a deep breath and let out a scream so loud that everyone had to cover their ears because of its power. Even Kang Hyuk was shocked by the intensity coming from a top student. After the yelling stopped, Hye Young calmly approached Kang Hyuk and talked to him. He mentioned he'd heard what Kang Hyuk said before and reiterated what another disciple had said, that martial arts in their Buddhist group were mainly for self-improvement, a way to reach enlightenment. But he pointed out their martial arts had a different goal. Kang Hyuk wasn't convinced. He questioned if it was worth risking their health just to protect others. Hye-young, visibly irritated and worried about Kang Hyuk's influence, thought to himself that the elders wouldn't punish a new monk like him directly. Hye-young then challenged Kang Hyuk. He suggested if Kang Hyuk thought their training was wrong, he should prove it. Kang Hyuk stuttered, asking how he could do that. Hye-young replied that if Kang Hyuk thought he knew the right way to train, he should show it by defeating those who trained in Shaolin methods. Kang Hyuk asked who he would fight and if he didn't have to fight Hye-young himself. Hye-young said it would be fair for Kang Hyuk to fight someone who started training at the same time as him. He called over another monk named Mu-gung. Hye-young said that if Kang Hyuk's ideas were right, he'd have a week from that day to train as he wanted. Then he'd spar with Mu-gung. Kang Hyuk couldn't help but notice the big difference in their sizes and wondered if Hye-young really thought it was a fair fight. He doubted Hye-young's fairness, thinking it was just a way to shut him up by putting him against a new guy. He thought Hye-young was a terrible senior. Still, Hye-young seemed pleased with himself, thinking he'd cornered Kang Hyuk. But Kang Hyuk surprised him by agreeing to the challenge, which left Hye-young briefly surprised. The other students whispered as Mu-gung stared hard at Kang Hyuk, and Hye-young looked angry. Hye-young told Kang Hyuk he'd picked the hard road, then told everyone to get back to training, which they did with nods of respect. Kang Hyuk's buddy came up to him, confused by his choice, and suggested he just say sorry to Hye-young. At that moment, an elder told another student, Mu-yol, to get back in place, and Mu-yol said, okay. Mu-gung and the other students stared angrily at Kang Hyuk, clearly upset by his boldness. Hye-young also shot him an enraged look, reminding him of their upcoming confrontation in a week. A moment later, Kang Ha was panting heavily and sweating profusely, yet he maintained his squat effortlessly. Suddenly, a man angrily called out his name, demanding to know why he was doing different exercises during the training session. Kang Hyuk responded, saying that Hye-young had given him permission and questioned whether the man had authority over Hye-young. Just as the man was about to respond angrily, Hye-young stepped in, reminding him of their agreement to let Mu-jin continue as planned, to which the man reluctantly agreed. Kang Hyuk then turned to the other students with a grin, warning them that their current exercises could harm their knees. He emphasized their youth and asked rhetorically who would be responsible if they injured themselves, stirring anger among the students. Hye-young silently wished Mu-jin would disappear, while Mu-jin jokingly remarked on the pain of their training routine. After 2 hours of intense training since dawn, Kang Hyuk was ready to replenish his energy. He was shocked when he found out that his meal was just rice and veggies. Realizing they were vegetarians, which made sense in a temple but still caught him off guard, he wondered where he'd get his protein. He wasn't pleased with the blandness of his meal and even questioned if he was dreaming because he could smell the food. Despite admitting it smelled good, he grumbled that vegetables alone weren't enough. Feeling frustrated, he even compared it to child abuse. When a monk reminded him to be silent during meals, he kept complaining, arguing that after a tough morning workout, vegetables alone were too tough. The adults scolded him for being rude during mealtime, and one looked like they were about to discipline him. Kang Hyuk, upset and annoyed by their reaction to such a meager meal, couldn't shake the thought of needing protein after intense exercise. He clenched his teeth in defiance, determined not to let it go. Lost in his thoughts about not wasting his morning workout, he was interrupted by someone entering the room and laughing. The grown-ups glanced up, surprised to see it was Hyun-mun, the leader of the hall. Being responsible for meals at Shaolin, Hyun-mun noticed Kang Hyuk looking a bit discontented and mentioned his hunger, offering more food if needed. Kang said he had enough, but Hyun-mun, thinking he was just hungry, kindly offered more side dishes. Then Kang asked if there were any protein supplements or chicken breasts, which shocked everyone with his unusual requests. Stammering, they asked why Kang was acting strangely and even pinched him to check if he was really there, while Kang insisted on needing protein. He stopped abruptly as he caught his reflection in Yol's eyes, realizing how weird he must seem, especially since his fatigue and the smell of food felt so real. Wondering why he hadn't woken up yet, he started to doubt if this was reality. Panicking, he looked away and decided he needed to handle the situation carefully. Accepting he might really be a young monk in the Shaolin Temple, he apologized, explaining that his odd behavior was because he was extremely hungry. Hyun-mun, smiling, guessed he must be tired from training. Yet when Kang Hauk requested beans and mushrooms as alternative side dishes, Hyun-mun was taken aback, his disbelief growing over this peculiar request. Moments later, Kang Hyuk found himself idly playing with his pen, disbelieving that they were expected to study Buddhist scriptures right after breakfast and early morning training. He mused that even Buddha would find their rigorous schedule daunting, concluding that he must have entered the world of the novel. He pondered how he might return home, wondering if his exit would coincide with the story's conclusion. He reassured himself that the situation wasn't entirely bleak, given that Mu Jin, the character he seemed to have become, was the protagonist known for exceptional talent, and Shaolin was revered as a stronghold within the Orthodox Alliance. Suddenly, his ink spilled on his book, which surprised him. He noticed that if there was a problem, it would be that he thought he had been marked by others. But when he remembered what he had done, he believed the deed had already been done. And since things had come to this, he swore to win in the spar and get them to acknowledge his training methods. In the hallway, Hye-young was astonished as he asked Hyun-mun if he was certain. Hyun-mun chuckled and assured her that Mu Jin was indeed quite unique. Hye-young felt the need to apologize to Hyun-mun for Mu Jin's behavior. But Hyun-mun was more interested in her opinion of Mu Jin. He mentioned that after the 7 days he gave Mu Jin, they would have a friendly match to settle things. Hyun-mun praised this as a wise decision, emphasizing that, as practitioners of Buddhism, they couldn't punish a disciple just for acting out of line. Then Hyun-mun inquired if it was true that Mu Jin would be facing off against Mu Gung in this match. He explained that Mu Gung was considered one of the most skilled among the new disciples at the Shaolin Temple. Every year, hundreds of new disciples joined, but many dropped out due to the tough training. Only a fraction remained in the main temple, so it was rare for first-class disciples or elders to know the newcomers' names. Mu Gung was an exception, and he was going to teach Mu Jin a lesson. 7 days later, the showdown arrived. Hye-young reminded them that the agreed-upon time had passed, signaling that they were ready to begin. Beforehand, Yeol had questioned what he was doing, and he had to explain that he was warming up. Yeol prompted him to explain in martial arts terms, so he clarified that he was performing a tendon extension technique. This preparation was essential to prevent muscle and tendon injuries during the upcoming exertion. He then asked Yeol if he wanted to give it a try out of curiosity, and he said yes. Yeol spread his legs in different directions, making the others wonder what you were doing and why you were assuming such strange postures. Yeol asked if you just needed to position your legs like that, to which Mu Jin said yes and told Yeol that you were doing really well, making Mu Jin wonder if your quick understanding was due to your youth. Then they heard someone shouting about consecutive punches and to watch out, which made them look up and see Mu Gung punching the air with great power. The others were amazed and shouted that they could hear snapping sounds from Mu Gung's punches. However, Mu Jin were horrified, knowing that he would be in deep trouble if you got hit by them. He wondered how he were supposed to defeat Mu Gung with just 1 week of training and how he should beat him. Then Mu Jin got an idea. Back in the present, Mu Jin smiled, thinking that Mu Jin just needed to use it. Hye-young noticed that Mu Jin weren't making any excuses to escape training, and although he didn't listen to their instructions, he seemed to have trained on his own. Hye-young then remembered asking Mu Jin, who was facing the tree, what he was doing leaning against it. Mu Jin replied that he was practicing a method to subdue Mu Gung instantly, while Yeol questioned why he kept rubbing against the tree as Hye-young watched him closely. Hye-young then looks at Mu Gung smiling, thinking that Mu Gung will easily teach Mu Jin a good lesson. Mu Gung smiled shyly because he saw Hye-young looking at him and apologized, explaining that he needed to climb the ladder by trampling on him. However, Mu Gung was confused when he saw him stretching and heard his bones cracking in the process. He then asked Hye-young if they could start immediately, making Hye-young annoyed that he was acting all tough and angering Mu Gung. When Hye-young heard it, he told them to step forward and they faced each other. Mu Gung promised to show the result of his 3 months of punching practice. But when Hye-young yelled for the spar to start, he suddenly charged at Mu-gung, catching him off guard. As Mu-gung prepared to strike, he wondered why his opponent was rushing in. Mu-gung swung, but Hye-young swiftly dodged, surprising everyone, including Hye-young herself. Then using his arms, Hye-young grabbed Mu-gung's legs, knowing he couldn't use his full martial arts skills on a kid without risking harm. He tackled Mu-gung down. The whole takedown took about a second. The adults were astonished, questioning if a senior student like Mu-gung couldn't handle such a move, while Mu-gung's friends were worried and couldn't believe he was down so quickly. Seeing Mu-gung's expression, they realized he was subdued. Mu-gung wondered what was going on and what Hye-young was doing to him. Once the other students recovered, they gave Mu-gung all sorts of advice. Even though they didn't know much about armbars, Hye-young warned Mu-gung that resisting would break his arm, so he should surrender. Mu-gung's arm cracked, but the other students urged him to keep going, thinking Mu-jin wasn't well trained. Another crack sounded, and Mu-gung warned Hye-young that his arm would dislocate if he applied more pressure. He also cautioned that Mu-gung might get seriously hurt if something went wrong. But Mu-gung didn't give up. Then there was a loud crack as Mu-gung tried to move his arm. Despite hearing his name repeatedly, the pain became unbearable, and he cried out loudly. Everyone, including the second-tier disciples, was shocked by what they saw. Finally, he released Mu-gung's hand, admitting his mistake and apologizing. The senior disciples looked to Hye-young for guidance, who tried to comfort Mu-gung and questioned the necessity of pitting two children against each other, knowing full well that he had won. The chain punch, a technique using fists, elbows, and shoulders, is powerful and favored for close combat. Mu-gung was known for mastering it better than anyone else among the young monks, even impressing the second-tier disciples. However, that morning, Mu-gung's usually effective chain punch failed miserably against a strange young monk who employed unfamiliar techniques. Mu-gung was in agony, lamenting how unfair it was. When asked what he meant, Mu-gung explained that if the fight had been fair, he could have won. In pain, Mu-gung asserted he could triumph in a fair fight. His companion agreed, trying to comfort him, praising him as the best. Suddenly, someone acknowledged Mu-gung's argument, catching him off guard. The lower-ranked students then explained to him that it was customary to use Shaolin's martial arts when sparring within Shaolin, and by not following this rule, he made them question the logic behind it all. The older disciple, visibly nervous, asked why he didn't employ the chain punch. He responded that if he had used it, the fight would have dragged on needlessly, risking serious injury for both of them. He chose to focus on the core purpose of a duel, which is to defeat the opponent efficiently. He couldn't understand why the man was fixating on this issue. He admitted to making Mu-gung cry, but pointed out that he managed to defeat him without causing any physical harm. Yet the man insisted that it was unacceptable since he didn't use Shaolin's martial arts. The lower-ranked students were aware that their revered Shaolin's chain punch had been easily countered by some inexperienced newcomer and his unconventional technique. Reluctantly, they acknowledged that Mu-gung had lost, but they were unwilling to admit it openly. The man worried that if this continued, the younger disciples might lose faith in Shaolin's martial arts, or even worse, they might leave. They turned to Hye-young, seeking guidance, but were surprised to see her smiling. They wondered what he was thinking. Hye-young then called him over, and he approached. He asked if it was true that he had subdued Mu-gung without causing harm, to which he confirmed. Hye-young then declared that he had upheld the true spirit of Shaolin and was the victor of the duel, leaving the other disciples stunned. He couldn't believe they were actually recognizing his win, but Hye-young explained that his technique prevailed because his opponent's skill level was inferior, and the ultimate goal of learning martial arts is to combat the wicked forces that also possess martial prowess. Hye-young then said he'd personally demonstrate the core of Shaolin's martial arts and the true strength of Shaolin, capable of defeating wicked demonic leaders. He instructed others to fetch a big rock, and soon two men struggled to place it on stage. The young students wondered if Hye-young would smash it with his fist. They couldn't believe they were witnessing Hye-young's martial arts firsthand. Hye-young approached the rock, telling them to pay attention as he would reveal the true might of the chain punch they were learning. Taking a deep breath, he focused and punched the rock. His strike shattered the rock easily. The students were amazed, wondering if they could do the same with hard training. Hye-young smiled proudly, realizing they grasped the essence of martial arts. He was stunned, realizing this was true martial arts, where one strike could break a mountain, one sword swing could defeat many foes, and one punch could demolish an enemy. Remembering Hye-young's emphasis on non-harmful victory, he questioned him. Hye-young stuttered, admitting he broke the boulder. Silence filled the hall as they observed the broken boulder. Later in the mansion, Hye-young's master, Sung, asked if Mu-jin defeated Mu-gung in one move. Hye-young confirmed, and Sung recognized Mu-jin's exceptional talent. Hye-young expressed concern that Mu-jin might exploit the chain punch's weaknesses, fearing he could be a spy for the unorthodox alliance or the demonic cult, which would be disastrous. While Mu-jin was angry and confused in class, unsure of what their teacher was talking about, Sung suggested that maybe Mu-jin wasn't a spy and didn't need to attract attention. Mu-jin wondered if he was using reverse psychology, but Sung assured him there was nothing to worry about since Mu-jin was still new. They'd keep an eye on him to see if he was just different or really a spy. Sung then remembered something and guessed that Mu-jin might come from a martial arts family, which surprised him. He thought it made sense because he doubted Mu-jin could have made up those strange exercises by himself. He suggested those exercises might be what Mu-jin learned from his family and said a father has a big influence on a child. He guessed maybe Mu-jin was trying to show his father's teachings were better than Shaolin's, which had been around for centuries. Sung also mentioned that since Mu-jin defeated Mu-gung, he might become more arrogant, and they wondered what to do about him. Sung suggested leaving Mu-jin to Beobgang and mentioned Beobgang had volunteered to join the Arhat Hall instead of the Disciple Court, which they agreed was a good idea. As night fell, the second-class disciples finished their chores and prepared for bed, but one of them noticed something and got scared. He told his friends to go a different way, confusing them. They peeked and asked if he had seen a ghost. They were surprised to see it was Beobgang, known for being strict about rules. They wondered why he was there instead of at the training ground. They guessed he wanted to train more without taking a break and admired his determination. One of them jokingly remarked that they were well aware of how persistent Beobgang could be, so they should quit pretending it was news. Everyone chuckled in agreement, adding that Beobgang's nickname should be Rules Dog instead of Rules Fanatic. Another man chimed in cheerfully, suggesting that the Mad Dog of the Discipline Court title suited Beobgang perfectly. But when someone mentioned hearing that Beobgang would be in the Arhat Hall starting tomorrow, the cheerful man's laughter turned to horror. He stammered, asking if Beobgang wasn't confirmed for the Discipline Court, to which a friend replied with rumors that Beobgang might even become the next master there. This revelation left the man dismayed, contemplating the prospect of dealing with Beobgang's strictness again among the second-class disciples. Beobgang, who holds significant influence, has always enforced discipline at Shaolin, starting from when they were third-class disciples. Beobgang has strived to be an exemplary figure, believing it unfair to enforce rules without adhering to them himself. Despite enduring intense training, which has taken a toll on his knees, Beobgang sees the pain as part of mental conditioning. Beobgang views Mu-jin as a troublesome yet promising disciple of the Arhat Hall, vowing to instill the correct mindset in him. The following morning, adult disciples were surprised to find Beobgang among them, questioning his unexpected presence. Beobgang said he joined the Arhat Hall instead, teaming up with them going forward. Someone there was impressed by Beobgang's physique, likening him to a soldier. Glancing around, he saw adult disciples in shock on one side and confused younger ones on the other. He quickly grasped the situation, thinking the man in front was likely the second-class disciple disciplinarian, but he decided it wasn't his concern. Beobgang announced they'd start morning training, beginning with the horse stance. As he moved around, he pondered that to guide effectively, he must pinpoint the exact issue. He believed understanding both oneself and the opponent guarantees victory. Lost in thoughts about diagnosing problems for effective treatment, Beobgang noticed someone doing the horse stance effortlessly, which made him pause. He observed the proper posture, legs spread wider than shoulders, straight back, buttocks pushed out, and toes forward. Curious, Gang copied the stance, wondering if it was right. He noticed the person breathe in and out while rising, which he tried but felt no different. The pain persisted, making him suspect it was a ploy to avoid training. Just as he was about to reprimand, the person said he wasn't doing it correctly, puzzling Gang. Asked what was wrong, the person didn't answer immediately, realizing he needed to start from scratch. He didn't get why Gang copied him, but noticed Gang's knees popping each time he bent them, indicating serious damage. As the trainer, he couldn't ignore this, then realizing Gang was meant to be the disciplinarian there. He started thinking about whether it would be helpful to have Gang as an ally. Realizing he had authority over Gang, he saw an opportunity to make his life easier there by gaining his support. He advised Gang that persisting with a bad knee could worsen the situation and asked if he could trust him to follow his instructions. Soon after, Gang began stretching his leg, making a comment about his flexibility. Instead of calling it stretching, he referred to it as a tendon extension technique, explaining how it could help loosen the knee muscles and make movements smoother during exercise. Gang acknowledged feeling the difference. He then instructed Gang to perform the movement in 30-second intervals, clarifying that this constituted a set and he only needed to do it 3 times. After examining Gang's knee and gently massaging it, he asked if it felt better. But Gang winced in pain, indicating discomfort even with light pressure. Realizing the strain Gang's previous training had put on his knees, he felt relieved and refreshed as the pain subsided. He informed Gang they were on the 2nd round but needed to restart. Encouraging Gang to continue, he noticed the adult disciples observing them. When questioned by Young about their interaction, another disciple responded that they weren't sure what was happening between Mujin and Gang. That's all for today. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If this video gets 30 likes, I'll upload the second part. Till then, bye.